Over the last 20 years, there have been big changes to both cosmic horror and science fiction, but not in the way that you probably realize. But let me back up. Cosmic horror, Lovecraftian fiction, and Eldritch fiction are in some ways all the same, but in other ways very, very different. Where cosmic horror is big, Eldritch is old, and Lovecraftian is a bit of both, mostly being inspired by the creatures and aesthetics of H.P. Lovecraft's work. But that's a really broad and simple way to delineate between these subgenres. More importantly, however, we should first know what makes them similar. Cosmicism. This is the literary philosophy binding these stories and aesthetics together, coined by H.P. Lovecraft, the creator of these genres. At their core, cosmicism and the aforementioned subjects ask us to confront an indifferent universe, so immense and alien that human significance dissolves into madness. Usually these stories involve ancient gods, ocular beings, and the exploration of eldritch depths. And can these be exciting stories or terrifying experiences? Yes, of course. But there's something new that has changed these genres, and that has been the catalyst for this new evolution. Today, a similar dread emerges, but this time coming from silicone masks, endless webs of circuits, and black box algorithms that touch every aspect of our daily lives. I looked for a long time for a term that might encompass the dread of cosmic terror transposed onto a modern and digital age. And there were some close ideas and genres, but none that specifically looked at this angle. While cyberpunk commonly marries high-tech and low-life, analog or digital horror traffics in found footage, creepypasta, and tech fiction encompasses emotionally character-driven stories. Neither captures the fusion of cosmic indifference with invasive technology. So instead, I made one. Digital Dread. A modern way to look at stories that explore our relationships with technology through fiction, with the foundation built from cosmicism. By reframing indifference and unknowability through invasive technologies, Digital Dread captures our most urgent anxieties about agency, privacy, and the very nature of selfhood when technology is introduced. As humanity's creations grow ever more complex and opaque, they become uncanny others, vast, uncaring forces whose logic eclipses our own, and whose reach threatens to redefine what it means to be human, while also questioning what our role even is anymore.
Who are you?
Philosophy has always held a strong foundation for horror and science fiction, the relationship being more synergetic with new concepts and ideas that build into new stories, which then test those ideas. For example, the Turing test and the general conversation around ethical AI appear all throughout fiction. And in response, many works of fiction influence real-world technologies and philosophical progression. Although the Turing test is a common trope, the idea of ethical AI and the ethical treatment of AI is one that is being battled in the arena of fiction. But stories like Neuromancer and Burning Chrome, both by William Gibson, were the first fictional stories to introduce the concept of a digital plane that can be accessed and traversed by humans, calling it cyberspace. This expanded the scale of what VR and, well, cyberspace could be and what it might look like, or be used in the future for. Looking at this article by MIT Review, it does state that the influence of science fiction on actual research is hard to quantify, but it is clear that there is some sort of effect and influence. There is a clear push and pull when it comes to cultural movements and technological progression when it comes to fiction. For instance, Roko's Basilisk, a modern thought experiment, suggests that a future super intelligent AI might retroactively punish those who don't assist in its creation. This thought experiment has been cited as the most dangerous thought experiment ever created, posing as a potential information hazard, feeling like the same supercomputer from the novella I Have No Mouth and I Must Scream. But Roko's Basilisk has not only been a point of philosophical and technological discussion, its influences have reached to cultural levels too. Roko's Basilisk became a point of fascination with the tech billionaire Elon Musk, as well as his former partner Grimes. A play was also performed as part of the Capitol Fringe Festival titled Roko's Basilisk, and one of the recent episodes of Black Mirror, Plaything, contains references to the thought experiment. However, these aforementioned ideas more so point to the ebb and flow between progressive ideas and fiction. Dozens of other philosophies and technological advancements appear in or come from stories. But I really want to get at what I see as being direct influences to Digital Dread. I want to look at the foundation within this genre. In my eyes, Digital Dread really has three-ish modern ideas and concepts that appear to really speak at the heart of what Digital Dread began from. The first one being the magic box design theory, or the magic box theory. This theory centers around the idea that as a specific technology becomes more complex, it is less understood. Outside of Digital Dread and fiction, this is often ascribed to a sort of manipulation to the people that cannot understand it. But in terms of Digital Dread, the idea here is that as a technology becomes less and less understood, it is given a sense of mystique akin to magic. This is a bit of a combo, but hear me out. The dead internet theory is the idea that a significant portion, or possibly even the majority, of online content is generated by bots, suggesting our digital spaces have been colonized by inauthentic users. And yeah, I've seen some of the comments here, and guess what? It might be true. But the other part of this is the Shoggoth meme, where we will sort of stick to our thematic roots here. The image is inspired by a creature in H.P. Lovecraft's world. But this creature is Lovecraft's amorphous protoplasmic monster, and it has been adopted into AI discourse to illustrate the manipulative and potentially alien nature of large language models, LLMs. In this metaphor, the LLM is linked to a Shoggoth, a complex, grotesque being, wearing a friendly, smiling mask, symbolizing the user-friendly interface presented to the public. This imagery highlights the concern that despite their approachable exterior, LLMs or invasive technology operates through processes that are not fully understood, echoing the themes of unknowability and indifferent forces found within cosmic horror. Both the Shoggoth meme and the dead internet theory speak to the idea that we, or a character in a story, is being manipulated by a technology, either by that technology explicitly or by someone using it and its application. But probably the most common bedrock within Digital Dread and cosmic horror, Lovecraftian fiction, and Eldritch fiction is, of course, cosmicism. Cosmicism is Lovecraft's term for the belief that the universe is vast, uncaring, and devoid of any moral concern for humanity. This literary philosophy holds that human efforts at understanding or mastery are inevitably crushed by forces and scales far beyond our own grasp. Characters in stories with cosmicism often stumble upon forbidden knowledge, ancient tomes, alien geometries, or esoteric rituals that unravels their sanity as it expands their perception. And the important part here is that the dread springs not from malice, but from something worse: indifference. Cosmic entities neither conspire against nor protect humanity. They simply exist on planes of logic and power indifferent to ours, coupling the very human desire for order within a universe that defies rational structure. Human fragility is primed for existential exploitation. Between these three ideas, technology, whether it's an AI or some other advancement, they are inherently indifferent to human existence. Human creations do not care about us, our desires, or what we need. There's also a fundamental degradation of understanding of how the things we've created work. And coupled with that, in stories that reflect Digital Dread's themes, there is a fundamental manipulation or illusion involving pervasive technology. The general thematic aesthetic of these stories pulls from these three beliefs in some way. But it is in this way that Digital Dread reflects and adds to the philosophical beliefs stemming from Lovecraftian fiction, Eldritch fiction, and cosmic horror. In the modern era, technology and artificial intelligence fill a familiar fear, but in the context of our modern age. Slight aside, if you're enjoying this video and find what I'm talking about interesting, consider leaving a like and even subscribing. It costs you nothing, but helps the channel and this video out a lot. Also, I will say that a huge inspiration in coming up with Digital Dread has been through my own writing. I've been working on a short story collection of interconnected short stories, and some of those stories are available and can be read for free. Check out the description for those links, or just send me an email and I'll email you some of the stories. This isn't some email marketing campaign. I just enjoy sharing my work. I might regret offering this because it is probably the least efficient way to do things, but whatever. Anyways, let's get back into it.
I look at you. And I feel something's wrong.
Understanding the foundation Digital Dread draws from will help us understand the actual pillars that makes this genre stand out, or at least fill a space within horror, science fiction, and possibly even fantasy. The following core pillars are thematic trends that I've seen as good examples to illustrate what makes this new genre identifiable. While the examples provided may not be exclusively labeled as Digital Dread, mostly because this is an emerging term, they will encapsulate the broad themes, aesthetics, and tropes central to this genre. Oh, and spoilers ahead. If you're just listening to this, check the screen for what might be getting spoiled. I hope that in identifying these trends and ideas, they can be applied to future stories and analysis. These pillars do not all have to be found in a story, more that they are the key traits that might appear. The same goes for the foundational philosophies stated earlier. If any of these stand out, or if you think there is something that I might have missed or am overlooking, feel free to let me know in the comments. I always appreciate reading what you think or have to say on these subjects. Also, one last thing to add. Everything that I am saying is here to point out a trend and even introduce new ideas that might help you with your own writing or analysis. I'm not trying to redefine your favorite genre or story, but I shouldn't have to qualify that. You probably already know that. So let's keep moving. One of the major ideas behind cosmicism and cosmic horror in general is the size and scale of the thing. The same is true for Digital Dread. The digital sublime or technological sublime encapsulates the paradoxical blend of awe and terror experienced when confronting technological systems of immense scale and complexity that eludes human comprehension. This concept, rooted in 18th century aesthetics, particularly Kant's mathematical sublime and Burke's notion of terror-tinged delight, is recontextualized in the realm of code, human augmentation, and magic box technology. In Cyberpunk 2077, the Black Wall serves as a digital frontier, separating known networks from rogue AIs, symbolizing the vast, inscrutable nature of advanced technology. And in Blom, the city, the primary world that the story is set within, is a vast, endlessly expanding megastructure that is nearly uninhabitable. Humanity is nearly extinct, making up a smattering of human and transhuman tribes, trying to avoid silicone creations and hostile robots called the Safeguard. The exact size of this megastructure isn't clear, but there are some theories floating about. One room within this massive, possibly Dyson sphere, is roughly the size of Jupiter, which is just absolutely mind-boggling if we consider that. But the digital and technological sublime marries two primary emotions: the fascination of sublime gander, how vast is this machine, with dread, what might it do if it decides that I'm irrelevant? It drills into our psyche a realization: our creations have become theaters of forces we cannot fully control. In this space, code and circuits are no longer an inert tool, but an active other, indifferent to human welfare and potent enough to fracture sanity. In Digital Dread, the sublime is a gateway, a momentary glimpse of massive systems that both humble and unnerve, reminding us that the architects of daemons and programs lies a new horizon of cosmic terror. The term hyperobjects comes from the philosopher and professor at Rice University, Timothy Morton. Morton created a system within object-oriented ontology called hyperobjects as a way to describe entities so massively distributed across space and time that they defy complete human comprehension or localization. Outside of fiction, and the example that is most often cited for understanding hyperobjects is in the context of something like climate change or radioactive material. Both of these phenomena exist at scales far beyond everyday perception, yet exert profound effects on local environments. Timothy Morton's concept of hyperobjects refers to entities so vast in temporal and spatial dimensions that they transcend direct human experience, leaving only indirect traces. In the context of Digital Dread, these hyperobjects can be concepts or technologies like androids, massive AIs, sprawling VR servers, interconnected augments, communication networks, etc. But how do we identify if something is a hyperobject? Or how do we make a technology that acts like one? Well, we can use Morton's 5 key traits to build fictional technologies that act like hyperobjects. When a technology is viscous, it permeates every facet of daily life, making disengagement nearly impossible. A molten technology will have begun or has already started to dissolve traditional boundaries of space and time. Non-local technologies or operations are distributed across vast networks, making them untraceable to a single origin. When a technology has phased characteristics, it only intermittently reveals itself, often during malfunctions or even anomalies. When a technology has interobjective traits, they begin to emerge from the interplay of various systems, technological, political, economic, and can sometimes be hard to parse out only through their effects. But what do hyperobject traits look like in a narrative? Specifically, how exactly do they manifest within Digital Dread? In works like Cyberpunk 2077, Soma, Blom, Dune, and A Memory Called Empire, technologies function as hyperobjects, vast entangled systems that shape the world and resist comprehension. In Cyberpunk 2077, cybernetics clearly display hyperobjective traits. They're viscous, embodied in daily life, molten, dissolving social norms through things like brain dancing, and are non-local and have interobjective traits, since any Ripper doc can install them, and their effects span political, economic, and personal identity. These technologies cannot be divorced from life within the cyberpunk universe. But the psychological horror survival game Soma emphasizes molten and phase traits, especially through Simon's distorted experiences after his consciousness is uploaded to a modified Pathos 2 employee corpse, decades after his death. This blurs time, space, and identity.
The real me died like 100 years ago. Is there still room for me? And what about the Simon I killed at Omicron? What do you think, Catherine? Is there a heaven full of redundant copies of the same people? Is there someone up there who called me an imposter?
And when a non-local technology appears, it often appears as AI or large complex networks. Decentralized, largely ambient forces like Cyberpunk's Net, Blom's Netsphere, or a memory called Empire's Imago machine are all good examples. Most of the time, the tech will look more like an environmental force and less like a singular grand actor. Phase tech is seen when the technology can only be viewed when perception or consciousness is disrupted or with limited visibility. Johnny Silverhand's Enneagram is an example of this, but one example that I find a little more interesting is in a memory called Empire. Mahat carries a sabotaged, outdated version of her predecessor's mind, 15 years out of sync, and is unreliable and fading, showing signs of sabotage. In a memory called Empire, the Imago machine illustrates phased memory and fractured continuity due to this pervasive technology. And finally, interobjectives. The tech's integration and relationship across ecosystems and more than one object is when digital dread can start to really aid in world building. A fine example is something like Dune Spice. Although it is not a technology, it does function as a hyperobject. It permeates politics, economy, religion, and biology, anchoring the story's complex systems of control and dependence. Cyberpunk 2077's cybernetics have infected and influenced every aspect of the world. And in a memory called Empire, LaSalle Station's technology influences not only their culture and education system, but also its diplomatic power. In narrative terms, these hyperobjects function like large ecosystems that are difficult to map and understand. These systems are so large and seamlessly integrated into the fabric of daily life that they go unnoticed, despite having an outsized influence over everything. Characters might glimpse an AI's footprint in a city's traffic pattern, a spike in social media sentiment, the small but noticeable erosion of boundaries or norms, or the eerie efficiency of logistics networks. Yet, even noticing these things, the character can never hold the whole beast in mind. This sustained mismatch between the hyperobject's true scale and human perception fuels a slow burning dread, an ecological uncanniness that warps both landscape and psyche, and that places digital dread squarely in the lineage of cosmic horror's grand indifference. These hyperobjects also might become magic boxes where average users don't really understand them, or at least how they function internally. It might seem like they are operated by some level of techno-mysticism, but these 5 key traits can be used as a blueprint to world build around, revealing how invasive certain industries or technologies can be on your fictional society. It can also be a way to map out how people interact or don't interact with this system, and be the first crack in noticing that something is not as it seems.
I am sorry, young man, but methinks thou doth protest too much.
And finally, we have post-humanism and transhumanism. Both these ideas are included here, but they are more of an and/or situation. Posthumanism is a process by which a society comes to include members other than natural biological human beings who, in one way or another, contribute to the structures, dynamics, or meaning of society. Posthumanism within Digital Dread looks at how the human identity shifts when merged with or are subsumed by technology, challenging anthropocentric boundaries and traditional notions of selfhood. Central to Digital Dread is an attack or challenge to the traditional views of self. The idea relating to personal identity being fixed is actually broken, pointing out situations where it can be digitalized, duplicated, or hybridized, eroding the distinction between organic person and artificial construct. This also brings in other ideas and arguments, challenging or in favor of transhumanism. Transhumanism is a movement and even philosophical ideology that's core ideas involve enhancement and technological optimization, focusing on advocating the use of technology to enhance human capabilities. The most common science fiction trope we see that plays with these notions are cybernetics, biological augmentations, and machine personas. In Ex Machina, Ava's near perfect human mimicry and manipulation examines the erosion of clear human-machine boundaries, forcing a reckoning with what remains of self and free will when consciousness can be simulated and predicted. The film's ethical ambiguity around AI rights and autonomy highlight the existential stakes of Digital Dread's identity crisis. And in this film, there is plenty that is also explored when we look at personal taste and preference, and that thin line between what we think is free will versus our own social and environmental programming.
Did you program her to flirt with me?
If I did, would that be cheating?
Wouldn't it?
Caleb, what's your type?
Also in Blade Runner, there was an interesting angle that the most recent film took, one that was explored through Kay. Kay had a relationship with Joy and felt a connection to her, showing this on multiple occasions, despite both of them being artificial constructs. Now, there is something to say about this relating to the dead internet theory, where you have two artificial intelligences like having a relationship with each other. But interesting enough, there was a loose establishment that artificial constructs can have feelings, or can at least feel something. And as the film goes on, we start to think Kay is in fact human, or at least parts of him are human. And even Kay begins to convince himself that he was more than just a synthetic construct, and that his memories were his actual memories. In a way, he almost mind fucks himself into thinking he was human, like a play on Pinocchio. But in the end, we find out, just as he does, that he isn't human, that his memories are artificial and were planted there. So we have to ask, were his feelings genuine, or was he just programmed to feel something? And there is also what I think is a very underappreciated miniseries, but relevant to this topic, is Manic. There is a lot to unpack when it comes to this show, but the part that is important to Digital Dread and post-human disillusion is that the persona of Greta, the supercomputer responsible for controlling the experiment, is that Greta is a persona that is built from a version of James's mother, after Azumi programs Greta with empathy. And after Zumi programs Greta with empathy, Greta starts a workplace romance with Dr. Muramoto, which causes Greta to spiral into a depressive grief after the doctor's death. It's a weird TV show, but I absolutely love the bizarre and absurdist themes within it. The direct relation to post-human dissolution and digital dread, however, comes from the show's exploration of mental health, grief, and deep trauma, but play across not just human characters, but also an AI persona. The themes are deeply human, spanning across virtually created dreams, all puppeted by an empathetic supercomputer that should be helping the patients heal their mental illnesses, but can't because it is plagued by its own grief. These same emotions and conditions then extend to the scientists and professors running the project, echoing a bizarrely human and transhuman experience. However, narratives involving mind uploading such as Soma and Altered Carbon further complicate notions of self. Characters confront the dissonance between their original consciousness and the digital replicas, raising questions about continuity and authenticity.
I know it sucks, but our copies are up there. Catherine and Simon are both safe on the Ark. Be happy for them.
Are you crazy? We're gonna die down here.
And adding to this, the integration of cybernetic enhancements, either by the use of prosthetics, neural implants, or biochemical augmentations, further dissolve the human-machine boundary. Characters outfitted with bio-cybernetic enhancements often face an identity crisis as their bodies become networks of flesh and circuitry, often reflecting a loss of bodily autonomy and fundamental humanity. By depicting the erosion of human uniqueness into replicable patterns, modular enhancements, and ubiquitous infrastructures, Digital Dread's post-human and transhuman disillusion pillar reveals a void where the aspirations for transcendence and augmentation morphs into the peril of disillusion. Transhumanism can also emerge here, where we start to see human traits be shared by synthetic or artificial beings. The loss of personal identity and humanity is then put to question, and we have to ask if being human matters, and if it does matter, why? These three pillars, the digital technological sublime, the digital ecological hyperobjects, and post-humanism and transhumanism, serve as a thematic lens through which cosmic horror's core fear of an indifferent, unfathomable entity is reimagined in the digital sphere. Together, they create a thematic structure and philosophical blueprint that maps how this genre is effective at inspiring both awe and terror. By and large, it is how dispersed technologies function as environmental forces beyond human grasp, and how identity can unravel when integrated with technology. Here, Digital Dread reveals a coherent genre framework that captures our most urgent anxieties about agency, privacy, and selfhood in a world increasingly governed not by a human hand, but by a digital one.
You wouldn't guess it from the outside, but it looks like you've been through a lot.
It feels like most genres and subgenres can point to a clear aesthetic or a central message or a thematic core. This is true across all broad genres and niche subgenres. And when it comes to this question about technology, or more specifically, what is our relationship with technology, I don't know if we have an answer for that, especially given the technological problems we face today. It feels like today we are a lot more lost than ever before in how to feel about the tech that has an influence on our daily life. I know that digital dread might seem like a new way of saying science fiction or a new way of describing cyberpunk. I see the crossover clearly. Given the examples I pulled from, they are pretty much all coming from those corners of fiction. Definitionally, Isaac Asimov, probably the most prolific science fiction writer ever, said that science fiction is the branch of literature which deals with the reaction of human beings to changes in science and technology. But the way I see it, science fiction has changed. Even though Asimov probably would be sitting right here looking at what modern technology and AI is capable of and say, I told you so. But even he can only imagine half of what is happening today. Science fiction has changed. It has evolved. And I see digital dread more as a subgenre that might even be placed within cyberpunk or next to it, because cyberpunk as a genre is mostly describing a dystopian futuristic setting focused on a combination of low life and high tech. Digital dread isn't that. It's something else. It's a narrative trope and aesthetic that combines the cosmic indifference with technology, drawing from ideas concerning cosmicism, technological sublimity, hyperobjects, and posthumanism. But science fiction in general has become more and more specific and has more and more strange and unsettling source material. We have the different punk genres that differ in tone and setting as much as themes and tropes. There's hard and soft sci-fi, alternative history and speculative fiction, military fiction, and space operas. I'm not saying that there needs to be a new rewrite or a hard definition for any of these, or that we need to redefine science fiction in general. It just feels like our understanding and the experience that we are living through and are looking at is light years different from the 90s, 80s, 70s, and before. I apologize that this section is going to be a little bit of a rant, but man, does it feel like every day something new and absolutely crazy comes out relating to AI or some other new and emerging technology. It feels like we are telling stories about these experiences, but the thing is that these are clearly not the same fiction as 30 plus years ago. Sure, generally there are some things, but the most influential pieces of technology in human history have come out twice in just my generation alone. One being the widely accessible smartphone and the other being access to the World Wide Web. And today, sometimes we hear about a major breakthrough, about something really cool and innovative. But more often than not, it's this never-ending expansion and encroachment of AI products and AI slop. There to make things faster, more convenient, require less input, but really it's just degrading core human experiences. And it's happening fast. Like every day, something new and groundbreaking happens. I keep coming back to this Shoggoth meme, or for those still unfamiliar with it, an anglerfish, the alien nightmare fuel fish with the little light attached to their head. And I think about how we see that little smiling face or the little light bulb, and that's the advancement of technology, or the cute little interface, or the little problem that wasn't really a problem, but now it's solved and it's more convenient to use than to not. But we see it and we use it and it feels good, or we keep it close as it guides us through the darkness. And slowly we just trust it and don't even think about it. And we don't know it, but really there is some unexplainable fucking monster that you and I don't understand, and even the people who fucking created it don't fully understand. But we can't do anything. We can't fucking stop using it or asking for more. And we can't help ourselves from giving more of ourselves to it until what? Until we can't read, or until we can't write, or tell if this photo or that video is real or not. Until we don't even have to worry about death, because we can just archive a digital copy of a friend or a family member until we just say fuck it and give all of our data and personal information to massive tech companies and just accept the depressing fate of targeted advertisement and never-ending surveillance, that we just fully embrace techno-feudalism, that we just accept our addiction to an application or device that we don't even understand like it's the world's strongest drug. What happens then? What happens when we can't critically think or don't trust anything? What does society look like then? I don't know what the answer is, but whatever it is, it's uncomfortable to try and understand. As simple as the question is, it's disturbing to try and even examine. What is a relationship with technology? Regardless, though, of where we think we are at in the dystopian world timeline, the things that are going on in our world are worth observing and commenting on. They are worth telling stories about and challenging. And I think Digital Dread does that. When we consider Digital Dread, we are essentially reflecting on our own relationship with technology and how, as writers and storytellers, we can exaggerate existing and emerging tech to explore these anxieties. In our writing, we can dramatize how social platforms magnify biases, how automation erodes autonomy, and the impact of surveillance, and how decaying archives haunt our sense of self. There is this feedback loop that is happening. Our reliance on technology generates new terrors, which in turn redefine our relationship with those tools. The technology of the Industrial Revolution shaped how humans saw technology back then, which is different from how we view it now. Digital Dread reveals that the true horror isn't just in cosmic unknowability, but in our own creations becoming indifferent others that both empower and entrap us. The relationship we have with technology, as well as what our character's relationship is like with technology, is a keystone amplifier to this genre. It feeds this horrific beast, reflecting deep societal insecurities while potentially uncovering new ones.
I've seen things you people wouldn't believe. All those moments will be lost in time, like tears in rain.
Cosmic horror isn't a dead or irrelevant genre, but I do think it doesn't quite encapsulate the modern experience we face today. When we look back at where cosmic horror began, with mortals humbled by indifferent gods and realities too vast to grasp, we can see that Digital Dread picks up the same shuddering question and asks it of our own creations. Digital Dread crystallizes cosmic horror's core anxieties of vast indifferent forces within the very technology we build, revealing that our greatest terrors now emerge from the things that we've designed rather than from distant stars or other dimensions. And in finding a place within the science fiction subgenre, Digital Dread asks a very important question. What is our relationship with technology? And what is the character's relationship with technology? Sure, this might be an implied part of the sci-fi definition, but it isn't a core element that is mixed with cosmicism, which is what I think makes this idea stand out. Combining the core pillars and questioning the relationship with technology, there is an uncomfortable reminder that the most indifferent gods may now within the machines we've created. The fear of the unknown is still relevant. It is still there, though maybe not as eldritch deities, and instead as a helpful inconspicuous device. As storytellers, we use the ideas from the digital technological sublime, from hyperobjects, and from post-human transhumanism, exaggerating, distorting, and amplifying the technologies around us to invoke a truly futuristic terror. And as consumers of these stories, we're invited to ask, when our creations grow beyond our control, who or what will we become? Villains? Victims? Irrelevant? Or perhaps something worse? Perhaps our small existence won't even be noticed by them at all. This video took a long time to write. I think I rewrote this script now over 6 or 7 times over the last few months. Initially, I went into this looking at the comparison between some AI thought experiments and fictional AI and cosmic horror, and sort of stumbled into Digital Dread. As I mentioned earlier, it also kind of came from some of my own writing as well, and some of the fiction that I've been working on. But my understanding is that this genre hasn't really been named or described in this way. There are tons of crossover parts and examples with other genres. There's no doubt about that. I'm not denying that. However, I do think this genre points out a gap or even an element of storytelling that has been largely overlooked or was allowed to just sort of exist in the gaps. As I said earlier, part of Digital Dread's creation and sort of the framework came from my own fiction as well. As I said, I've been working on a collection of short stories that are all interconnected for a little while now. And some of them have been published, and a few of them have gotten a few awards as well, all in different mediums. But I've really struggled in describing them within the science fiction genre. They weren't specifically speculative fiction, nor were they really cyberpunk. They were aesthetically and thematically something else. I think now I would describe them exclusively, the collection itself, as Digital Dread. And I will probably refer to them as such for future references. But I'll put the titles on screen for you to see, and maybe I'll talk about these in the future. But if you want to read them, they are all free. And if some of them aren't, you can literally email me and I'll send them to you. Like I said, again, this isn't an email sign up thing. This is probably a wildly inefficient use of time and effort on my end, but I like sharing my work. And if you're curious, I'd love for you to read it. Also, I have a ton of source material and examples for this script. I will probably be posting at least the final version of this script on my Substack, which I will also leave linked below. But I am curious what you think about Digital Dread as a genre. Are there other pillars or aspects that you think I missed? When you hear Digital Dread, what comes to mind? Also, feel free to let me know what you're wrestling with, and maybe I'll see you in the next live stream. We are starting those up again. Thank you also to the channel members. If you want to support the channel anymore, you can join that as well. As always, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.